The company Solar States is teaming up with the Philadelphia School District to help prepare students for careers using solar energy.
Solar States flip the switch of the largest solar panel array in Philadelphia.
Welcome back to another episode of Yo, Son! Welcome back to another episode of Yo, Son! I'm your host, Micah Goldmarkel, here with
Jared Pashko, and today
Joy
on
Baxter.
this, here's Joy. Welcome to the show. How's everything going?
Good. Thank you for having me.
We know Joy probably 5 different ways. We're going to get into all of them today. We've got a fun-filled show, talk about a whole bunch of different aspects of solar. But I think I want to start off with the first way you got involved in solar, I think, is at your house, right? You've had a solar array at your house for a really long time, which is a question we hear from homeowners in the residential space all the time is what it's like after 10 or 15 years. So maybe you could tell our listeners, tell us how long have you had the solar array at your house?
Over 10 years. I forgot the exact date we put it in, and we've had no issues at all. We have a cooler attic in the summer since that side gets shaded by the solar panels.
Right.
And we do have a solar edge inverter, which when we put it in at the time, they said it was about 10 to 15 years lifetime. We're hoping we're going to be, you know, really extended since now that they offer the extended warranty. I figured, well, it might be better than that. And so we haven't had to do anything to the system, and we're just cashing in.
That sounds great. All those new homeowners, this is what it's like 10 years down the road.
Absolutely. Everything works perfectly all the time. That's how it is.
Yeah. But sometimes there's things that come up, but as expected with most things in your house, get them fixed. So, Joy, the first time I met you, I think you were representing your church community in a solar project there. It was a really interesting project. Um, if I remember correctly, the main sanctuary of the church has a beautiful slate roof. It wasn't really a building that the community wanted to put solar on. There were a couple other buildings around the property that we ended up putting solar on, and that's been a really interesting experience. Maybe you could share a little bit what it's been like for you. Am I getting all
Sure.
the details right?
Yeah, well, I think the only detail you might be leaving out is one of the reasons not to put it on Slate as an installer. I believe it was about twice as much money to put it on Slate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
at least.
yeah. So
That's real.
so that's why we chose. We have f- five um, five electrified buildings on our campus, partially because our church was founded in 1765. So we have a little bit of history. So we have a couple, we're residential. We have 3 residential buildings and so the one run one room schoolhouse that's historic, um, and then our main sanctuary and education building. So the and then also a cemetery maintenance building. So the cemetery maintenance building, and we had 2 rental houses that live in the cemetery, and those had asphalt roofs. And so we were able to put solar on those 3 buildings as we did separate installs, and one of them does not have a very big load. And so we virtual net meter from that building over to a residential building on the other side of the street, which is our current parsonage. And we're able to utilize and get the residential billing rate over there.
Right. Yeah. So let's break this down because I think we've got a lot of really exciting stuff to get into with listeners that they'll be really interested about. First of all, as a major disclaimer, every utility company has different regulations around aggregate metering or virtual net metering.
Hmm.
St. Paul's is in Pico, which has some favorable terms for the project that we designed for Joy. Um,
Hmm.
Essentially, we were able to put solar on a building that had very low energy consumption. I think it was the cemetery maintenance building.
Mhm.
We weren't able to necessarily put solar on the parsonage. I can't remember exactly why.
Right.
Maybe it wasn't good
It
for
also has
good,
slate.
it also has
Slate,
light, right?
the
Mhm.
bane of our
And
existence.
so what we were able to do is we're able to capture that solar energy at the cemetery maintenance building, then apply it, all the extra that was generated there, we're able to take that extra energy and apply it there at the parsonage. And so that's a really interesting provision. I think there's a provision like that was initially kind of part of that was defined because of farming. How if you had a farm with a meter
Yep.
other side of your farm for, let's say, the sprinkler system, or a small shed, you didn't want to have to put solar on all these buildings to kind of cover the various usages at different buildings. That way you can kind of simplify the installation but still get the full value of maximizing the space on the roof.
Yes, and I know some people who do it residentially if they have a separate meter, but far from their house if they have a ground mount installation and
Right.
to the main building. And I think this is notably virtual net metering is can be used very well for municipal buildings and for the school districts, which generally
Yep.
Yeah.
have
Yep.
lots of bills uh, at various buildings, and they're all billed to a same entity, which is required, and they're in a 2-mile radius.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah.
That's right. And that 2 mile radius is as the crow flies. It's not like sort of driving down the road, is my understanding. Just to give folks a little bit of background here, um, when you buy electricity from a generation supplier, you know, you can't track the flow of electrons specifically, right? You can't say, well, I generated that power and so it went there. What's happening is that generators, whether you're a nuclear power plant, a gas power plant, or a solar plant, or wind farm, hydro, they're feeding a certain number of kilowatt hours onto the grid, and then people are buying kilowatt hours, and they're just saying, well, I fed 100 kilowatt hours in, and person over there is buying 100, and so that's what we're going to call they bought my 100. So virtual net is sort of similar to that, right, Joy? I mean, it's like, well, I fed some solar onto the grid, and now I get to choose a few spots where I want it to be absorbed. Is that your general
Yes,
experience?
yes, I
Um,
think absolutely. You're not actually following the electrons. You're keeping track of the net kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
Um,
right.
what
And one
going
thing that I
into
think a
this?
lot of people in Pennsylvania should really take note of about this. And Joy, I remember when we first started this project, it was a really hot topic, and it still is. And I think it's going to actually become an even bigger topic. But in Pennsylvania, we do not have community solar. And in your case, it kind of was very simple that um, the church group had all of the utility bills in the same entity name, and they all are within two miles. And as we keep pushing the agenda of, hey, what are the ways to help support solar? What are the ways to go solar? If you can't put it on your roof, one of the ways that a church or a different organization can do that is by virtual net metering. And we've actually worked out some interesting different projects that we're currently developing that would have kind of larger community impact, utilizing centralized sites to build solar arrays and then distributing that energy to nearby bills in that same entity's name. And I don't want to give out too much information because it's still in the works. I'm a little superstitious, but another great example of how this virtual net metering really helps in Philadelphia is multifamily dwellings, right? A lot of the buildings in Philadelphia are duplexes or triplexes. and you might have 3 or 4 meters. You might have decided to reconfigure the building and have two apartments now act as one house. And so sometimes you might be getting 2 or 3 bills, but occupying the space. And a great way to kind of aggregate all of that without having to do a whole bunch of electrical work is through virtual net metering.
Hmm.
I think it can be useful, but I think community solar is what we really need, unfortunately.
Preach, Joy, preach.
I mean, for a way that electric bills are done, um, solar to residential is so much more beneficial than it is for commercial. Yet commercial has the roof space. Um, so if we could set community solar is essentially partnering with the organization that's going to be putting the solar on that roof, and then they're going to get more money back because they are going solar by doing this community solar. But we have to convince the people in Harrisburg.
Yeah,
Yeah, Micah,
yeah.
that's something know a thing or two about.
It's the
I
old
shy away
policy
from it.
push.
Yeah.
Policy push. I've worn a trail on Amtrak to Pittsburgh and back. I mean, to Harrisburg rather and back many a day. So yeah, it's a heavy lift, but we're getting there in Pennsylvania. Joy, so this virtual net metering probably not as straightforward and easy to set up as it should be. What was your experience?
So I should say in general, I've always had problems with any changes with Pico. However, the virtual net metering actually went smoothly,
That's
and
great.
and the but there wasn't much information about how it would actually work. They said they would do it, but the actual intricacies are not spelled out because I think just not enough people do it. So then when I went back to check, well, how are they actually doing the calculations? I was really pleasantly surprised. So the way the building that is coming from, like we said, is overproducing. So we've not yet come to a month that there isn't enough kilowatt hours, extra kilowatt hours to cover the building that we're going to virtually net meter. So because of that, the whole what they do, at least Pico's process seems to be that they look at the electric portion of the building that we're virtually net metering to, and they do a credit, a monetary credit for that whole amount, except for the customer charge. So their calculation is they take that entire amount and then they subtract the customer charge, so that since they are a customer, they do pay that amount. But all the other light items associated with the electric side of the bill for residential is covered as a credit um, on virtual net metering. Now, the
That's
only
great.
weird thing about this is that it doesn't show up in the bill. It they generate
Oh,
they generate a bill, and then they also generate a credit. So so some months at the beginning we had a couple of months where kind of stored up where they did the calculations, and so there was no bill even because because it covered the gas side, just because there was extra credit. But then so now what happens is a bill is generated, and then if you look at the Pico website, and a credit is generated. So it's a little bit confusing about how much you actually owe, um, but it we do just the auto billing, so it seems to
uh-huh.
just
Right.
work out with them. We don't ever overpay. But if you were to do this without that auto billing, you would still get a regular bill, and then you'd on your maybe the next month, if you didn't
You
utilize that credit,
get
then you'd see
credited
the
back.
credit on the bill.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's confusing. That's really
And I
confusing.
have
Well,
experienced exactly that with other customers. And to the credit that you gave, Pico is very diligent, and I think you did a good job of describing it. They have not only generating a bill and generating a credit, but they're also generating your usage, and you're looking at those line items on multiple accounts, right? On the account that's generating the electricity and applying it, and on the one that's receiving it and and using it. And their
Yep.
billing periods aren't always aligned. So what days they're
Right.
in. And I had to go through this, and yeah, sometimes the information isn't there, but I remember looking, oh, in the next month the credit was applied. And the irony of it all is that in the next month, even though the credit is applied, there's new usage that's billed for. So you're kind of,
Right.
unless you have the automated billing, like you're saying, there's always kind of this bill due. And if you continue to pay it, what happens is you're just paying a whole bunch of bills that are kind of non-existent, because just after the bill is generated, the credit is offsetting that bill. And if you're kind of paying the value on the
Right.
bill, you're just building this kind of, these payments for nothing, and building a credit on your utility account for no reason.
Right.
I,
Right.
I did double check that also, that the only the amount of kilowatt hours that that virtual net metering is using is being transferred. So we do also have extra on the original building.
I was gonna
So
ask that.
yeah, so we will be able to get a credit at the year, Pico's year end,
Right.
for that solar energy credit.
Right. So the energy year for Pico runs May to May, and I was going to ask. So it's almost a mathematical impossibility that you would generate just the right amount to cover the main meter and the additional buildings. There's probably some additional credits. Has that been made clear to you how many additional credits there are?
No, but they seem to be tracking it correctly.
Yeah.
So,
That's an interesting answer. So, can you explain that a little bit?
well, I'm talking about the remaining kilowatt hours that are not virtual net metered over, right?
Right. So again, the devil's in the details here, right? So you've covered your main meter where the solar is on. You've virtual netted to another building and you've covered that building's entire kilowatt hour usage. Now there's another bucket where any additional kilowatt hours need to go. That is we'll call it the credit bucket. How do you track what's in the credit bucket?
So that is being tracked just like if we didn't have virtual net metering. It has an excess kilowatt usage banked on the original bill.
Got it. And so it tells you month to month how many additional credits go into that bucket. Is that correct?
Right. So whatever doesn't, it takes the generated, subtracted by the used at the original building, subtracted by the used at the virtual net metering building, and then whatever is left over goes into the banked kilowatt.
Right. But they don't give a running tally of how many you have banked because maybe the previous month you had a bank. Do they keep telling you? Do they not
Yes.
only tell you what you banked that month, but also what your total bank is?
Yes. It gives
Oh,
you
so they show you that.
yeah, they show you the running tally.
That's great. That sounds like it's kind of ideal.
It's working.
You heard it
This is
here
such a
first. It's working.
it's working. It's working. Everybody, it's a funny conversation we're having. Pico, great people who are working there, but sometimes things can go a little haywire. And it's so great to hear about something that's just working the way that it should. So that sounds pretty ideal.
Now, I have to say, I was warned not to try to get fancy, and try to go from the excess of that first building to another building, um, because one of the reasons is we wouldn't have any more residential buildings. So the
Uh,
financial benefit of just getting that credit at the end of the fiscal, you know, Pico's fiscal year, and virtual net metering to yet another building was going to be minimal, if any. So, but most likely causing issues. So,
right.
and in our main church building, we do buy renewable electricity. So so then that gets even more complicated. So instead of instead of going virtual net metering from one meter to another, we're simply just doing the virtual net metering from 1 meter to just 1 meter.
Now, I got to drill in on that for just a moment. Let's just say you had multiple residential places, okay? I've heard two ways that virtual netting can work, and I'm not sure which one it is. I've heard that you can, whatever is left over from the building that is hosting the solar, you can evenly divide up what is left and just then it gets spread among multiple buildings. Or you can have a waterfall where the next building gets credits, and then if it covers all of that and there's more left over, then another building can get credits. How do you understand how in theory, how do you understand that would work?
Well,
Maybe Jared knows. I don't know.
we had a fairly large credit from one of our buildings, partly because it included a wrong billing issue
Ugh,
from
that's brutal.
Pico. And so instead of carrying a large credit, what I asked Pico to do was just simply write us a check.
Hmm.
And so honestly, I think the money in the bank is probably easier to work with. Like if you
Yeah.
right? So for the other buildings, we just kept the renewable energy credit once the fiscal year ended, or whatever they call it for Pico in
The
May.
energy year. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
energy
Yeah.
year ended. Um, but since it was like a $600 credit or so, I knew we weren't gonna that was gonna be more than we were gonna be billed in the next year. So then,
Right.
so then it worked by asking for the check. The only caveat to that was that they did not send the check to the billing address. They sent the check to the address of the meter.
Mm, it's always
So
something. It's
so
always
um
something.
so lost the check for a while, but then we found it.
Good. Very good. Well,
But
all's
to
well that ends well.
clarify, Micah, I'm almost positive that you cannot split the credit. It only works as a waterfall.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay. Okay.
if you have 5 or 6 accounts and you want to interconnect the solar to one of them, it's going to go to number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And as Joy said, each time you waterfall down to another bill, it gets fancier and fancier. And if you're one of those, fancy brigades at the Mummers Parade, well, there's a lot of glitter that comes along with that. So be very, very careful.
Great
But
analogy. Great. Great.
before I don't want to end the podcast without talking about the other hat that you wear, Joy, because this has been really exciting, particularly prior to the IRA. The clean energy co-op was doing some great work for nonprofits in southeastern Pennsylvania. I hope you can share with folks about that. And I'm curious how the IRA has helped your cause, and kind of what that has done to impact the investing that you're doing in solar in the area.
Sure. So I'm a member of the Clean Energy Co-op. The Clean Energy Co-op was founded in Northeast PA, and we've done 6 projects all in the Northeast so far. We are hoping to do our first project down in Southeast PA with Weaver's Way Co-op. We've been in talks for a while. They have a new Germantown store we'll have a nice new roof. So we're hoping that solar can go on there. The way that the Clean Energy Co-op works is really unique. Um, so basically, it's a collective investment. It's an investment co-op. So we collectively invest to make a solar project happen. So a lot of nonprofits or community businesses don't have the capital up front to do a solar project. Unlike residential, which we've already gone through, that it's a little bit more lucrative financially. It's payback from solar. Um, for commercial properties that are under 200 kilowatt size, it's harder to get any type of financing. And that could financing that we've done is in terms of both loans and power purchase agreements. So the way that we work is we first talk to an interested party, see um, if they're interested in working with us. The only thing that we ask is that there is a collaboration, that if the entity that we're working with, we want to get members from from that organization that will become Clean Energy Co-op members and invest to make sure that project can happen. Now, the investments it's absolutely socially conscious investing. This is for people who want to expand
All
solar
right.
beyond their house. Even if they can't do it on their house, that would be it's awesome. Like, because if we don't come up with the money, these projects don't happen. So it's a direct impact, and to make renewable projects happen for a lot of times really motivated organizations, religious organizations. We've had two organic farms, and so in a municipal organization and another two other nonprofits. And it's, it's very much they want to go solar, and we enable that to happen.
Yeah. I was actually just
Great.
talking with a church the other day that said, their congregants aren't really comfortable with the church taking out long-term loans, but they also don't have the capability to always do fundraising campaigns, capital campaigns to fund large projects like a solar array. And immediately I thought of you guys because it's a great opportunity to know that I'm putting somebody in good hands where they can learn a lot of information of both on the solar side of things and the finance side of things. So, um,
Right.
if anybody that's listening is looking for some good financing, great place to go is the Clean Energy Co-op.
And
Absolutely.
one of the reasons we're able to give good financing is that we don't we don't have any employees. We're all volunteers. Except for this year, we did hire a bookkeeper to help us out. But the that
How
part is
dare
a little
you?
tricky. I know. But but yeah, I mean, we're all doing it because we really believe in it, and we want to make these projects happen. The I would say, how you asked about how the Inflation Reduction Act has helped or changed things. So um, a power purchase agreement um, was the norm for a nonprofit going solar before the Inflation Reduction Act, because basically third-party ownership was able to um, get all of the tax benefits that a nonprofit was not. With the Inflation Reduction Act, um, the the nonprofit entity is able to get some of the tax benefits, um, which is the help me out, guys, the
The
credit.
elective pay,
Cash,
direct pay.
direct
Yes, but
pay, cash
what is
credit.
it? What's the term for like a resident? There's like,
Oh, the investment tax credit.
thank you.
Yes.
The value of the
The
investment tax.
ITC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, which is now back to 30% of the installed cost of the system.
Right.
The
Right.
other piece that a commercial third party can get is um, the oh, I'm losing all my words today. Not the deflation, the
Oh, the
The
depreciation.
depreciation. Thank you. The
Mhm.
depreciation amount. So it depends on the size of the system. If it is, and if an entity is able to get a um, low bond rates. Um, if it is financially beneficial to do either a PPA or a loan. Um, so now we are able to do either. We're structured that way, um, and the benefit of doing the loan, I would say, for especially smaller entities, is that um, people might be concerned about having somebody else own something on your roof. I can guarantee that really this doesn't matter that much, but some people really get in a wad about this. and for that's required for a power purchase agreement. But for a loan, the people obviously own it, and you just have to have some kind of collateral. Um,
Yeah.
Great,
Well, that sounds
great.
great.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that
So
project gets off the ground there.
yeah, yeah. And hopefully you can spread that financing mechanism all over, because it sounds to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like you're trying to get sort of stakeholder buy-in on the financing of their own solar arrays and things like that. Like very interesting ways of getting solar done. So thank you for innovating on that in such a community-oriented way.
well, I the people who set this up in the Northeast are awesome,
Hmm.
and there was a group down here. We were trying to figure out exactly what they were doing, but we didn't know about them yet. And then we asked, "Oh, they're doing exactly what we want to do. Can we just form a chapter down here?" And so
Right.
we did. And I would
Right.
say we're not exactly the first innovators. Cooperative financing of solar has been going on in Germany for quite some time. In some areas,
Cool.
the majority of the solar has been put in through co-ops, such as the Clean Energy Co-op, but not in Germany.
Nice. Right, right, right. And we won't hold it against you that you hired a bookkeeper.
It's a reasonable thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so all of this talking of solar financing always makes me hungry. It's one of those things. Talk about it, and I just start thinking about food right away. No, it's that point in the show though where we like to talk about good eats. Joy, I'd love to hear a spot around you where you love to go eat. And then I'm going to throw it to you, Jared. I want to hear something good that you've had
Oh, I
recently.
got a good one.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, I should say we have a lot of food allergies in our family, so we do most of our
Oh,
um, cooking at home.
very
But
good.
so, and most of all of our cooking is vegetarian, and
Mm,
primarily vegan as well because of allergies. So I would say I do a lot of lentils and bean dishes, and
mm,
they're very good.
Nice and
yummy.
warm for the winter, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Some lentil soup, some a little escarole, if you will, maybe. So
Very sophisticated there, Jared.
I'll tell you um I went to this place called Stogie Joe's down in South Philly in East Passyunk, and they have a
Stogie
stromboli
Joe's.
there that is just delicious. It's cheese and spinach sauce on the side, so it comes out, and the bread was so thin, and it was just crispy, like a nice thin crust pizza, which I
Ooh,
never had with a stromboli. It was always, heavy and doughy. This is light and cheesy. Oh, it was so good.
that sounds delicious. What's it? Stogie Joe's?
Stogie Joe's.
Where's that at?
I think it's off of maybe 16th and Passyunk, maybe.
Okay, South Philly. Shout out. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring one up. Since Joy went vegan on me, I'm gonna come back at her with a vegan option here. You're gonna leave a lot lighter in the wallet, but man, is it good. Veg in downtown Philadelphia has extraordinary vegan cuisine. Just the most amazing dishes I've ever tasted in my life. And man, you wouldn't. A lot of the times you wouldn't even guess that you were eating vegan, right? I've taken so many people there who are like, "Nah, vegan. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna like it," and then they leave and they're like, "That was vegan? Oh my goodness, that was incredible!" So they do a really, really amazing job. I don't know where they're at actually. 12th and Locust, somewhere around there, downtown. I know that part. But really, really good food. Well,
Now talking
Joy,
about all this food, I'm getting hungry right
I
now.
know, I know. Now it's getting close to dinner time. We're gonna cook up some lentils ourselves. Joy, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been another episode of Yo Son. I'm your host, Micah Goldmarkel, here with.
Jared Pashko.
And
Peace
Joy
out,
Thanks a lot,
y'all.
Baxter.
Joy. Bye, Joy.
Bye.
Peace.